My name is Alex Carter. I'm 42 years old. I live just outside Chicago, Illinois. And last month, I got walked out of my own office by a security guard half my age, while a kid wearing a $1,000 suit sat in my chair like he earned it. He hadn't built anything. He hadn't led a single deal. But he called me into the conference room that morning, leaned back in my old chair, and said these exact words. "Alex, your time's up. You've done a lot of great things here, but the board wants vision. And you just don't have it." I didn't respond. I just sat there. Because what do you say when someone spits in your face using a smile and a business card? I'd been with that company for 14 years. I started when we had a tiny corner office and one half-broken printer. I helped land our first real contracts, personally pitched to our Series A investors, and led the expansion into 3 new regions. I wasn't just a vice president of strategy. I was part of the foundation. But when our old CEO retired after an acquisition, the board brought in fresh blood. And just like that, I became legacy. So they fired me. No thank you. No farewell email. No recognition dinner. Just a folder on my desk, a severance agreement, and a cold handshake. I remember standing in the parking garage that evening, watching the sunset bounce off the glass building I helped design, and thinking, this can't be how it ends. But here's the part they never saw coming. Just 7 days later, I walked into a private board meeting with the same investors they claimed I lacked vision for. And when I left that room, the man who fired me wasn't smiling anymore. He thought I was gone for good. He didn't realize I'd built more than spreadsheets and strategies. I'd built trust. And trust doesn't retire. This is the story of how I went from getting fired for lacking vision to being handed the entire company by the very people who were supposed to forget me. He thought I'd just disappear. But I knew something he didn't. The investors trusted me more than they ever trusted him. Before everything changed, my life had a rhythm. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I'd get up at 5:15 every morning, not because I had to, but because I wanted to stay ahead. I'd jog 2 miles, get back, shower, and head straight to the office by 7 o'clock. I wasn't chasing promotions. I was building something real. Our company was just 6 employees when I joined. A cramped room with buzzing fluorescent lights, a used Keurig machine that only brewed decaf, and 1 bathroom for the entire floor. But we had grit. And we had goals. I still remember our first $1 million client. I stayed in that client's city for 12 days, slept in a cheap hotel, rehearsed our proposal over and over until my throat went sore. When we won the deal, our CEO said, "That's our guy. That's the future." I never forgot that. It wasn't just business to me, it was purpose. I knew every employee's name, their kids' birthdays, even which ones were caring for aging parents. I personally ran onboarding for new hires. I'd spend hours explaining our strategy, not because I had to, but because I believed in it. By year 6, we doubled revenue. By year 8, we were negotiating with global firms. And by year 12, we were on Forbes' top 100 mid-cap growth companies list. That plaque still hangs in the office. My signature's right on it. I had built more than a title. I had built trust. I had built a culture. The old CEO, Warren, he wasn't flashy, but he had integrity. He once told me, "Alex, if this company ever changes hands, make sure it stays in the right ones." I promised him I would. But when Warren retired, I wasn't even considered for the top role. The board wanted someone with fresh energy. Enter Nathan Mercer, 34 years old, Harvard MBA, obsessed with buzzwords like disruption and synergistic realignment. He showed up in a Tesla and acted like the company owed him a standing ovation. At first, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I mentored him. I walked him through legacy systems, introduced him to top clients. He nodded a lot, smiled at the right times, but I could feel something under the surface. Dismissiveness. He didn't see me as a partner. He saw me as a relic. At one point, I overheard him say to an analyst, "Carter's like a rotary phone. Reliable, but who uses that anymore?" That one stung. But I stayed quiet, because that's what real leaders do. My wife, Jenna, started noticing I was coming home later, more tired. She'd say, "Are they taking advantage of you again?" I'd smile and say, "No, it's just a phase." But deep down, I knew the phase was permanent. There were red flags. The energy in meetings changed. Conversations that used to happen in the open were now behind closed doors. My name was left off email threads where I used to be CC'd by default. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I was slipping. Maybe I was too comfortable. But I kept reminding myself, "Alex, numbers don't lie." And mine didn't. I had closed 5 of our 10 largest clients in the past 3 years. I had personally helped navigate us through a legal crisis when a contract dispute threatened to derail our West Coast expansion. And yet, suddenly, I was the one being questioned, scrutinized, minimized. But I still believed loyalty mattered. I still believed merit would win. I still believed Nathan would eventually see I was on his side. Turns out, he'd already made up his mind. And the board? They were too distracted by quarterly slides and jargon to see what was really happening. "She used to call me her hero. Then one day, she stopped." Except in my case, it wasn't my wife. It was the company I gave everything to. There's a special kind of silence that fills the air when you're no longer wanted, but nobody's said it out loud yet. I started feeling it around month 3 of Nathan's leadership. It began subtly. Meetings would be scheduled without me. I'd find out after decisions had already been made. People who used to pop into my office for advice stopped showing up. My calendar started looking empty. I asked Nathan about it once, casually over coffee. "Hey, I noticed I'm not looped into the client roadshow planning. Is that intentional?" He gave me that same politician smile and said, "Oh, that? Yeah, just trying to let the younger guys take some ownership. You've carried enough weight." It sounded like respect, but it felt like a dismissal. And then it started stacking up. One morning, I saw that my access to our financial forecasting software had been revoked. IT told me they were streamlining access levels. That was strange, since I was the one who designed half those forecast templates. Then came the decks, project decks I had personally worked on, suddenly rewritten and rebranded without even a courtesy ping. They'd replaced my strategy sections with vague slides about disruption, scalable synergy, and next-gen transformation. I remember staring at one of the new decks and thinking, "This is style over substance. There's no depth here." But it didn't stop. One night, I stayed late to prep for a partner meeting. I walked past the executive conference room and saw the lights still on. I heard voices, Nathan's voice, and a few junior VPs. I paused. They were laughing. And then I heard Nathan say, "Carter's still here? Jesus. The man doesn't get it, we're pivoting, and he's still using 2015 playbooks." I didn't move. I didn't react. I just stood there for a moment. Then I walked back to my office, sat down, and rewrote the entire partner strategy deck from scratch, just to prove that I still had it. That night, I didn't go home until 2 a.m. But even then, I still didn't confront him. Why? Because part of me believed this was just growing pains. I didn't want to be the bitter old VP clinging to power. So I stayed quiet. But I started watching. Emails were being forwarded to Nathan before they came to me. Team members started acting different, hesitant, unsure whether to loop me in. A few even asked, "Hey, are you still heading the strategy side?" I'd smile and nod. Of course. Even though I was starting to wonder if that was still true. Then came the budget meeting. Historically, I presented our quarterly projections. But this time, I wasn't even on the agenda. I sat in the back while Nathan pitched a plan built entirely on half-formed ideas and overestimated revenue forecasts. The investors nodded politely, but I saw their eyes flicker with doubt. I wanted to say something, to speak up, but I didn't, because I knew how that would look. Legacy guy can't let go. Resisting change. So I stayed silent. But inside, something was shifting. That night, as I walked out of the boardroom, I got a text from a former client. "Hey Alex, just curious, are you still with the firm? We're being pitched by someone new, and it's off." That was the moment I knew. I wasn't just being sidelined. I was being erased. Piece by piece. Quietly. Strategically. And Nathan thought I wouldn't notice. But I did. And I wasn't going to let it continue. I stayed silent. But I started watching. Then one night, I saw the audit report and realized what he was really hiding. Some betrayals hit you like a truck. Others arrive in your inbox on a Friday night, dressed like business. It was almost 7 p.m. The office was mostly empty. I was wrapping up some long overdue email replies when a junior financial analyst, Morgan, knocked on my door. She looked nervous. "Hey, Alex, I thought you should see this." She handed me a printed report. It was an internal audit, one I hadn't been informed of. I flipped through the pages. Line after line of exaggerated projections, undocumented. Strategic expenses, consultant payments with zero justification, and redline edits showing Nathan's digital signature. At the bottom of the last page, one note stood out. "Reallocate Carter's discretionary budget to Executive Innovation Fund." He'd stripped my department of funding, quietly, and redirected it into a personal slush account. This wasn't just backstabbing. This was theft. Fraudulent, manipulative, and deliberate. I looked up at Morgan. "Where did you get this?" She hesitated, then said, "I found it in a shared folder. He must have uploaded the wrong version." She knew she was risking her job. But she also knew who I was, what I'd built. And something in her eyes told me I wasn't the only one who'd been watching Nathan slowly ruin what we had. After she left, I sat alone in that room for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just sat there, staring at the report, running timelines in my head. I realized Nathan hadn't just planned to get rid of me. He had built his rise on top of dismantling my legacy. And the board? Too distracted by numbers and buzzwords to notice the hollow shell being built beneath them. I closed the file, stood up, turned off the lights, and on my way out of the building, I didn't feel broken. I felt clear. I didn't cry that night. I started planning. He thought firing me would be the end of the story, but it was just the part where I got serious. I didn't quit. I didn't scream. I didn't march into Nathan's office and wave the report in his face. Because I knew something he didn't. Storms don't make noise until they land. The very next morning, I started building my own file. Every communication, every deck edit, every budget line shift, every HR complaint quietly passed around. I pulled it all. And I didn't do it from my company laptop. I used my personal system, backed up to encrypted storage. For weeks I played dumb. I nodded in meetings. I gave polite applause when Nathan pitched his hollow strategies. And the whole time, I was digging into his consulting contracts, digging into our vendor changes, digging into meeting records which now showed closed-door discussions, where entire projects I created were handed off without credit. And I wasn't the only one who noticed. 3 ex-employees who had recently been restructured out reached out to me privately. Each had the same story. Sudden terminations. No real cause. Just swept out. One of them, Ravi, had built our internal tracking software. Nathan fired him and hired an overpriced firm to redo the system, which ended up copying Ravi's original code. Sloppily. When Ravi sent me screenshots, I had to laugh. They had literally cut and pasted his work and slapped a $400,000 invoice on it. This was no longer just ego. It was gross mismanagement. And now I had receipts. I reached out to a trusted former board advisor, Mr. Talbot. He'd stepped down a year ago, but still held significant stock. We met over dinner in a quiet corner of an old Chicago steakhouse. I laid it all out, the doctored numbers, the fading client trust, the chaos behind the PowerPoints. He didn't say much at first. Then he leaned forward and asked, "Are you ready to go back in, Alex?" I didn't hesitate. "If it means saving what we built?" "Yes." Over the next 2 weeks, I had private meetings with 4 major investors. Each of them remembered what the company was like before Nathan. Each of them had already been noticing red flags, vague updates, missed KPIs, silent executive exits. They just needed someone to show them the full picture. And I did. Not emotionally, not dramatically, just facts. Financial leaks, client churn, fluff metrics, shady executive bonus structures. And finally, my offer. A full recovery proposal. Realignment of operations. Leadership restructuring. Staff morale rebuilding. Re-engagement plans for lost clients. Everything clean. Scalable. Measurable. No ego. Just execution. I told them. One of them, a sharp, quiet man named Cole, tapped his finger on the folder and said, "You're the only one who hasn't tried to sell us a dream, Alex. You're just offering the truth. And right now, we desperately need that." By the end of that week, the vote was already circulating. Private. Off the record. I wasn't waiting to strike. I was just watching the trap close, slowly and perfectly. Nathan had no idea. He thought I was fading. He thought I was old. He thought I was done. He forgot. I had built this company with no shortcuts. And I wasn't about to let him burn it down in a blaze of buzzwords and branding decks. She thought I'd never fight back, but she forgot. I've been trained to win wars without raising my voice. The investor meeting was scheduled for Friday. Nathan had no idea what was coming. He strolled into the boardroom, like he always did, sharp suit, smug grin, flipping through a sleek, over-designed presentation titled Q3 Vision Alignment and Strategic Outlook. He didn't notice the extra chairs in the room. Didn't notice Mr. Talbot sitting quietly in the corner. Didn't notice Cole's body language had shifted. No smiles, no greetings. Just stillness. But he noticed me. When I walked in, wearing a simple navy suit. No briefcase. Just a black folder in my hand. He blinked twice. "Alex?" I nodded. Sat down. Didn't say a word. The board chair called the meeting to order. Nathan launched into his pitch, buzzwords flying like bullets. Next-gen metrics, visionary pipeline, culture 2.0. But no one was listening. Not anymore. When he finished, the room was quiet, until Mr. Talbot looked at me and said, "Alex, would you walk us through your report?" I didn't stand up, didn't project slides. I just opened the folder, and I spoke plainly. In the past 6 months, the company has lost 4 major legacy clients. Our new software update was copied from the original in-house system and sold as third-party innovation. The Executive Innovation Fund has zero transparency, and the internal forecast metrics are inflated by an average of 38%. Nathan scoffed. "You don't even work here anymore, Carter. This is a smear job." I kept going. 3 whistleblowers submitted complaints that were never documented. 2 were terminated within 2 weeks of doing so. Then I passed around the internal audit report, the same one Morgan had found. Pages marked, signatures highlighted. Cole didn't ask a question. He just flipped pages slowly. When he got to the end, he looked at the board chair and said, "I'd like to make a motion." And just like that, the vote began. 7 minutes later, Nathan Mercer was unanimously removed as CEO. He stood there, frozen. The board chair said, "Nathan, security will escort you to your office. You can collect your personal items, but your company access has been terminated effective immediately." Nathan turned toward me, half angry, half desperate. "You think they'll trust you again? You think this is over?" I stood up, straightened my jacket, and said, "It's not about trust. It's about truth. And you just ran out of it." He didn't speak again, just walked out, slower than usual. The door clicked shut. Silence. Then Mr. Talbot spoke. "Alex, we'd like to offer you a temporary return. Full executive powers. Stabilization phase." I didn't hesitate. "Let's begin immediately." Within 48 hours, we had full control of systems, launched an internal audit on all departments, and reached out to every major client Nathan had lost. In less than 3 weeks, 2 returned. Morale shot back up. Investors started calling again. And the company? It didn't just survive. It remembered who it really was. I didn't take revenge by yelling. I didn't destroy him in public. I just showed the truth and let it do the work. Because real power? It doesn't scream. It simply arrives. He fired me for lacking vision. But in the end, I was the only one who saw what was coming. 6 months have passed. And life, it's quieter now. Not in a lonely way, in a peaceful way. I didn't stay CEO. That was never the plan. I came back, helped stabilize the mess, rebuilt the leadership team with people who actually cared about the mission, and then I stepped aside. I recommended a new CEO, someone from within, someone who had been there in the early days and remembered what it meant to build, not just scale. She took over, and the company's now stronger than it's ever been. As for me, I took a long road trip with Jenna. We drove through the Rockies, took photos, laughed in ways we hadn't in years. I realized I didn't lose everything when I was fired. What I lost was noise. What I gained was clarity. I still consult here and there. Still get phone calls from founders asking how to turn things around. But I choose my moments now. I don't chase anymore. People think revenge is about power. It's not. It's about reclaiming your dignity without destroying your soul. I never raised my voice. Never threatened anyone. I let the truth speak, and it did. That office building I helped design? I pass it sometimes. I see new faces in the windows, new names on the glass. And I smile. Because they're building on something real. Not hype. not ego, but something that matters. As for Nathan, he resurfaced a few months later on some startup podcast, talking about toxic legacy culture and innovative setbacks. I didn't finish the episode. Some stories are best left behind. But this one was worth telling. Because if you've ever been pushed out, talked down to, replaced, or betrayed, I want you to hear me clearly. You are not done. You are not worthless. And no one gets to define your legacy but you. They took my title, but they couldn't take my name. And in the end, that was the only thing that ever really mattered. I rebuilt. Not for revenge. Not for applause. But for peace. For self-respect. And for the version of me that almost believed I didn't matter anymore. He mattered. And so do you. They took everything except my soul. And from that, I rebuilt my life. Not for them, not even for revenge, but for me. If this story moved you, subscribe. There's more to come, more stories of betrayal, truth, and calm, calculated justice. You're not alone.